What up, Coordination? How you doing? We are continuing our exploration of decentralized identity with the founder of the Idena Network, Andrew, who is an anon, is joining us today to talk about their approach to doing Sybil resistance. So basically, Idena is what they call the first proof-of-person blockchain. And basically, personhood is proved by showing up online within a strict window of time and solving a series of flip tests. Think of them as like kind of CAPTCHAs, like human intelligence tests, to make it so that bots can't operate accounts. This is called a validation session. And if maximally successful, Idena helps create a more democratic, borderless world. We talk about quadratic staking. We talk about Gitcoin integrations. We talk about why Sybil resistance, how we can create a more democratic Web3 with Sybil resistance in this episode, and then just various use cases for proof of personhood. So I think this is one of the more technical episodes that we've done. Andrew's kind of I would say he's like a deep technical subject matter expert. If you want to go deep on Sybil resistance, probably a good episode for you. And if you're watching on video, we have no video for this one because Andrew is anon. But if you're listening to audio, it'll sound the same as any other podcast. So a fun episode. I think that Sybil resistance is important. Idena is one of the many players out there making an earnest try at creating more Sybil resistance. And so without further ado, I hope that you enjoy this episode about Sybil resistance with Andrew, the founder of the Idena Network. Enjoy.
The world has woken up to refi, and CELO is here for it. CELO is the layer one for the regenerative finance movement. It's fast, planet positive, and built for the real world. CELO has committed to producing a sustainable future from day one and has built its technology around one of the lowest carbon impact consensus mechanisms, and is the world's first carbon negative EVM compatible layer one blockchain. CELO is a movement to create the conditions of prosperity for everyone, whether it's tokenizing carbon credits with Toucan, providing capital to underserved communities with Unicorn, or building for millions of users around the globe. CELO was created to transform crypto enthusiasts into a movement of changemakers. Follow along on Twitter at CELO.org to learn more about how CELO is accelerating refi for a positive, lasting impact on people, communities, and the planet. And if you're a builder interested in refi, be sure to join the Build with CELO hackathon live now with a prize pool of over $100,000. COINSHIFT is a leading treasury management and infrastructure platform for DAOs and crypto businesses that need to manage their treasury operations. Every crypto org needs to manage its treasury, and COINSHIFT offers a simple, flexible, and efficient multi-chain treasury management platform built on top of the highly secure Gnosis Safe. With COINSHIFT, your organization can go from primitive single-chain treasury management to expressive, flexible, and multi-chain treasury features, such as global user management, global contacts, proposal management, and many other features that can be shared across an entire organization, allowing users to save time and reduce operational burdens and gas costs. COINSHIFT even has data tools like account reporting across the 7 chains on which it operates. Used by industry powerhouses such as Uniswap Grants, Balancer, Consensus, and Masari, COINSHIFT is speeding up the coordination and efficiency of the organizations that use it. You have to keep up with the frontier, and COINSHIFT makes that easy. So sign up at coinshift.xyz/bankless.
Andrew, what's good? How you doing?
Yeah, hey, Kieran. Great.
Really have been going deep on Sybil resistance this season of the GreenPilled podcast, and so really excited to talk about Idena. Tell us about Idena and how you think about Sybil resistance.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. Really appreciate that. I think the Sybil resistance is a very important topic, and it's getting even more and more attention across different platforms last time. So, let me introduce myself first. I'm Andrew. I'm Andrew. I'm a co-founder for Idena. I'm software engineer, and before crypto, I've been for more than 10 years in IT, and I've learned about Bitcoin in 2015, and I was really amazed about Bitcoin because what I learned about it is not a digital currency. It's not like a PayPal, but it's something new, and it has no underlying asset, and it's kind of a value itself, which exists only on the web, which was really kind of amazing idea. And the most important part for me was that nobody solely controls the Bitcoin. So it's what Sybil resistance is about. And in 2015, we started the semi-decentralized crypto exchange. It was the first Swiss-based crypto exchange in Europe. And it was a non-custodial, semi-decentralized setup where you could control your money with a private key so that exchange could not get your deposited coins. But at the same time, you could trade back and forth with the speed of normal centralized exchange. So what we did is we provided the payment channels for trading for users. And it was a building block for Lightning Network. But we were live even before the Lightning Network was launched that time. And we learned a lot about the layer 2 scalability solutions. And there are lots of trade-offs, about about that, and it's a complexity, liquidity problem, and ultimately all the layer 2 scalability techniques are kind of constrained by the limitations of the first layer of the blockchain itself, and that was the starting point for Idena. We actually decided to solve that problem. So we didn't want to make identity protocol, and idea was that we just make a scalable blockchain that can perform a substantial number of transactions without decreasing the level of decentralization. And actually, this is kind of we try to solve this scalability trilemma. So the idea is that we just enable parallel on-chain computation, which is a sharding, and instead of running one blockchain, we run just many interconnected chains, and instead of running just one state machine, we run multiple state machines, which are secured by independent set of validators. So how can we make it securely? We just to make that possible, we just needed to have as many independent validators as possible to secure every chain. So we needed to have an excessive decentralization, which is, I think, the key for solving the scalability trilemma. And the Sybil resistant that time was really very, very, very practical, for us. It has really practical meaning for us. But the problem was that we couldn't find, the right basis for this decentralization. What we understood that time, that money doesn't work, staking doesn't work, because of the nature of capitals. Its wealth is getting Pareto distributed all the time. So we go like a rich get richer. So we needed to find a better basis for Sybil resistance, which is kind of scarce, but opposite to money. And the question was, so what is the most evenly distributed resource on the planet? It's not money, it's not CPUs, it's not electricity. So what is that? And the answer was, it's us, it's human beings. So yeah, this is how we started with the Sybil resistance. And interesting part here is that because we just came up with the idea of human beings, we try to get a better understanding of Sybil resistant problem. Because initial definition of Sybil resistant attack was telling us about the large number of pseudonymous accounts which attacker can create to get a disproportionately large influence on the system. But Satoshi actually changed that definition. So instead of using accounts, he used CPUs. Like to make a Sybil attack on proof of work, you need to buy lots of CPUs. To make a Sybil attack on proof of stake system, you need to buy lots of coins. Like, for example, to attack Ethereum, you need to have like many accounts with 32 ethers each, And kind of a joke, to attack a Twitter, you need to make many accounts with $8 each, which is kind of a joke. But is it going to be kind of Sybil resistant? I don't think so. And what we currently have in Ethereum, that more than 70% of the blocks are currently OFAC compliant, which means that 70% of validators actually follow their rules. And is it okay? I don't think so. And the problem is that we are, as a community, we just agreed that it's okay to have large stakeholders dominating the network if their intentions are good So if they're not interested in attacking the system because they lock their stakes, but I think it's not okay. And the reason is actually what we have in Ethereum is a Sybil attack. I mean, the Sybil resistance is not about intentions. Sybil attack definition is telling us about an attacker gaining disproportionately large influence on the system. This is what we have. You see that these 70% of validators who follow the OFAC rules are just a few guys, and this is nothing but Sybil attack. And we failed to handle it, and we failed the Sybil resistant war already. And the problem is that we accepted that. And now if we want to solve that, we just need to acknowledge that problem. I think we shouldn't welcome Sybil attackers, even if their intentions are good. Even because regulators can come in, and all local government may come, or their intentions may change, or what if they can short the stake coins?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that we've kind of trodden the ground on GreenPill of why Sybil resistance matters a lot. So basically, moving from one token, one vote DAOs to more one human, one vote DAOs creates more democracy in how tokens are distributed and how decisions are made. And I'd be curious if you sort of agree with that summary. If there's anything you would add to it, and then I want to talk about how Idena creates Sybil resistance.
Yeah. But before we just dive into this specific of Idena, I would try to tell a bit more about the building kind of a unique identity primitive. Because when we started Idena, we tried to find the existing solution for a unique identity primitive. And, the problem was that Idena is the blockchain, and we needed to find a kind of a layer one identity, solution. But, identity data is very sensitive, and it's not usually suitable for, storing this data on blockchain, because blockchain is immutable. And we try to find kind of, privacy preserving, or even better, anonymous solution for that. And there were many other problems, like we needed to have the open source solution, we need to have decentralized, AI resistant, and non-contextual, non-subjective. So it should be like a global registry of validated identities. And finally, it should have been like we needed to find it like if Puppet resistant solution, which I think was the most difficult. And we tried to iterate with many approaches. We decided just not to go with the government-based IDs because of the privacy issue, government trust issue. And we learned about biometric solutions. There are kind of there are proprietary solutions that cannot work with blockchain, and open source solutions have their own trade-offs. How the biometrics is analyzed. Either it's publicly available, like you publish your biometrics data on chain, but then you have a privacy issue or deepfakes issues, or it's a client-side analysis, like you have a public neural net with some ZK knowledge proof, but then you also have some problems with white box attacks and the adversarial perturbation attacks, which are kind of which can be applied for the neural nets. So the last options that we could use, that was the attendance-based protocol. So because other protocols couldn't work with blockchains, there are too many trade-offs, and we just decided to go with the kind of a protocol that is based on on participation of users during the kind of validation ceremonies. So the idea is that people cannot have many accounts because they cannot be in many places at the same time, because the time is scarce, and we can build a protocol around that idea and kind of make it in a way like people mutually validate each other without any centralized party. So initial idea, was to run a global Zoom party when people talk to each other at the same time. We tried, we tested that, but it wasn't scalable enough. And then we just decided to go with the validation ceremony where people just communicate with each other with some kind of a prearranged test, And this is how we started Idena. We started like building our own protocol for unique identity solution, unique identity primitive.
Right. So it seems like you wanted to have a Sybil resistance technique that was going to be privacy preserving, didn't have any PII, and these Zoom meetings were sort of like the prior for you. We actually had Brian Ford on the podcast a few episodes ago, and he talked about 4 ways to create Sybil resistance: biometric, nation state IDs, web of trust, and then the 4th one was presence based. Yes. And so the one that really jumps out to me with these sort of Zoom parties being the method through which you wanted to emulate with the Idena protocol is presence based. If I'm in the presence of you at a certain time, then you can't be 2 people at once on that same Zoom party without people catching you. Is that a fair take and a fair synopsis of what you said?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. This is what we tried and tested, and we just we couldn't build the right protocol for Zoom meetings because we need to to let people talk at the same time and challenge each other at the same time, which is pretty complicated.
Yeah. Well, this feels like a great jumping off point to talk about the Idena ceremony and how Idena creates Sybil resistance. So you want to take us down that rabbit hole?
I might take a bit like some more kind of details about what Idena is, because I want to emphasize that Idena is not a Sybil resistance solution. It's not a identity solution. It's a blockchain, and it's a general purpose blockchain that aims to encourage running human-centric apps on top of it. It's based on democratic principles like one person, one vote, and it's not a kind of smart contract, or it's not a fork of any existing blockchain. It was developed from scratch, and it's secured by the network of nodes which run by people. It's either individual or family nodes, and every person can run the validating node with equal voting power, which makes Idena one of the most decentralized blockchains. And there are around 600 nodes up and running as we speak. So the core concept of the Idena protocol is a unique identity, and we call it crypto identity because it's somehow similar to cryptocurrency. It has no underlying identity data. It's anonymous. It's global, so uniqueness is not contextual, and it has no central issuer that could certify your uniqueness, and is based on mutual verification and validation parties. And I think the most fascinating part about Idena Sybil resistance and packet resistance is that it's not just empowered by the crypto identity concept, but it's empowered by the quadratic staking. So I think that quadratic staking is the most important part about Idena, because Sybil resistant identity itself, I think, sorry to say that, but I think that Sybil resistant identity is a myth. However, the identity primitive, like unique identity primitive, is a missing element for building Sybil resistant system. And if you don't mind, I just want to tell a bit more about this provocative, statement, because
please do. Let's go there.
Yeah, I think we were very idealistic when we started Idena. We wanted to build a democratic system based on pure proof of personhood, like one person, one vote governance system with equal mining reward distribution, without any initial investment, no staking. We wanted Idena to pay equal UBI for their validators. But the problem is that unique identity is not enough for that. It isn't Sybil resistant by itself. And it doesn't matter which protocol you use for the proof of personhood, either biometrics of web of trust, or it could be even government-based identity. The interesting thing is that there was a really cool project. It's called UBIC, like UBIC. You can Google it. It's a kind of proof of passport identity solution. You can, to make your identity, you just need to scan your NFC chip of your passport with your iPhone, and you can get the zero proof of your identity on the blockchain immediately. It was so cool and so simple solution, and it worked really well until one guy from China came in and just submitted around 20,000 passports in one single batch. It's really crazy. And the problem is that you can do the same with video verification. So people can say you some words for you on camera just for a few cents. They can scan their faces or iris for a few cents. They can do even on a regular basis if you just pay them. And this is kind of a evolution of fake identity arm race. Essentially, proof of personhood is just the final stage of that arm race. At the beginning, we had algorithmically based generated accounts, like in the early stage of Web 2. So it's more or less solved. The problem was more or less solved by CAPTCHAs. We still use it, and then the next stage was of this arm race was just human generated accounts where one guy could make hundreds of accounts per day. And we currently have these human farms generating thousands of accounts 24/7, sitting together. and the third stage is a proof of personhood protocols, which problem is these protocols can be attacked with a kind of puppets, where many people can generate just many accounts. Each account is linked to one person, and these puppet accounts are valid from the proof of person protocol perspective, but they're not Sybil resistant. You know what I mean? So it's not possible to prove who is exactly the owner of account, and it's really hard, because usually these people, this kind of puppets, they're not interested in claiming their own accounts, their ownership of their account. So yeah, this is a bad news, for all the proof of person protocols, that system based on unique identity are not Sybil resistant. And I would call that a naive proof of personhood. Mm-hmm. So the thing is that the system that formalizes unique identity and neglecting the capital creates strong incentives for coercion and identity collusion. It's a a form of authoritarian systems, where you have strong leaders on the ground that can coordinate lots of people just to extract the value. And what we have is ultimately we have two extremes there. On the left side, on the left hand, we have an authoritarian systems where money doesn't matter. It's an identity-centric system. And on the right side, we have a plutocratic systems, which are token-centric. And on that side, the identity doesn't matter. And good news about that both sides, both extremes, authoritarian and plutocratic systems, are just extremes located on the same dimension, and we can generalize them, and we can find a middle way between them, by combining them together. And this is what we call quadratic staking.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. So tell me about quadratic staking.
Yeah, I think that quadratic staking is a real gem. We were lucky to discover that idea, and I'm happy to share details about that with you. The quadratic staking is the model that actually combines proof of stake and naive proof of personhood. It's it's something that makes your mining rewards proportional to square root of your stake. So essentially it solves the plutocracy problem inherent in capitalist system. So it discriminates against whales or large-scale investors. And at the same time, it increases the weights of small users and encourages them to participate more actively. So to make quadratic staking work, you need to have this, unique identity primitive, because otherwise, large stakeholders could just split their stakes across many accounts. But with the proof-of-personhood or kind of unique identity primitive, you can stake the coins only if you have this kind of account, validated account, and you can just you can be slashed if you don't prove your liveness. And at the same time, if you want to withdraw your stake, then you need to terminate your account. So it's your stake is fully connected with your unique identity, and basically your stake is always at risk, related to your proof of your uniqueness of your identity, and which actually makes the identity primitive more Sybil resistant. So on the one hand, we have a quadratic staking, which is just an improved version of linear staking. But on the other hand, it makes a unique identity itself more Sybil resistant and more puppet resistant. So this is what we actually see currently in Idena during the last few months. So before quadratic staking, we observed a really aggressive growth of human farms. And after we released the hard fork update with the quadratic staking model, then we see the decrease in human farms. Actually, human farms just who made their accounts just to extract the value from the network decide to stop their business. So this is what quadratic staking, and of course quadratic staking has its own drawbacks. So I mean the main downside of the quadratic staking is its exclusivity. It's an advanced version of linear staking, but unfortunately the monetary component of unique identity just filters, excludes some people, and a fully inclusive and democratic system where every person has equal income and equal rights is a subject of coercion, and I think that it's an unachievable and idealistic and utopian, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So the quadratic staking is a kind of a compromise between two extremes, like a capitalistic system that doesn't take into account identity, and communist system that denies the role of private capital.
Right. So, I mean, it seems like it's a way of staking your tokens, wherein the amount of tokens in the voting power that you get from staking is a square root of the amount of tokens. So it's more democratic than a full one-to-one token system. Yeah, but one human, one vote. It's not fully on that spectrum. And my experience with quadratic funding, quadratic voting is via Gitcoin, and one of the things we've always thought was really powerful about quadratic funding is that it gives the people with more capital more of a voice and an incentive to give more of their capital, but it doesn't give them one-to-one. It gives them a square root, like a decaying more influence for putting in more capital, which is a way of weighting the whole system on some towards the poor and the many over the rich and the few, but still giving the rich people an incentive to participate. Do you see any sort of symmetries between quadratic staking and quadratic funding there?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the quadratic staking idea was fully inherent from Glenn Whale ideas about quadratic voting and quadratic funding proposed by Vitalik. I mean, it's a very important concept, and the more projects follow this concept, the more Sybil resistant the whole ecosystems can be, because otherwise, if you just consider the identities like identities without stakes like equal, then you automatically create a pressure, and incentives for authoritarian guys who can, coordinate people on ground and just create, puppets. So we need to use this approach, widely across many projects. It's very important.
Working in Web3 is awesome. It's freeing, powerful, and so much fun. But working outside of the typical W-2 employee structure is a deal breaker for so many. OPOLIS is helping the self-sovereign worker focus on what they do best, their work, while managing the back end for them. There is a lot of nation-state overhead when working in Web3, and OPOLIS takes care of all of the back-end stuff, freeing you up to do what you do best. OPOLIS leverages group buying power through a community employment co-op, helping you save 20 to 50% on high-quality, affordable healthcare options through Cigna. So, do what you love and maintain your financial security. With OPOLIS, you must be authorized to work in the United States to receive OPOLIS benefits, but OPOLIS is expanding its services to Canada starting on January 1st, 2023. So, book a 30-minute consultation with the OPOLIS experts and join OPOLIS by December 31st of 2022 and get 1,000 work tokens and 1,000 bank tokens when you sign up. So go to connect.opolis.co/bankless to get started. GOLDFINCH is a decentralized credit protocol with a mission to connect the world's capital to the world's growth. GOLDFINCH focuses on real yields from real companies, so start lending your USDC to real businesses driving growth worldwide. GOLDFINCH's borrowers are proven fintechs and credit funds in emerging markets who need access to GOLDFINCH's capital to drive economic growth in regions faced with barriers to financial access. In just under 2 years, GOLDFINCH has loaned over 100 million USDC, reaching over 1 million people and businesses across 28 countries. GOLDFINCH is doing what DeFi was always meant to do, expanding financial access to those who have historically been shut out of the TradFi system. So, become a GOLDFINCH member to put your USDC to work, empowering real businesses' growth. Join GOLDFINCH's new member vaults to be an active investor and take part in supporting GOLDFINCH's security and expansion. Receive yield enhancements generated by protocol revenue, plus access exclusive communication channels and more. So go to goldfinch.finance to get started.
Well, I'd love to get into the actual Idena ceremony at some point. Does that make sense to steer the conversation there? Or is there anything else you wanted to say before we get into that? Cool.
Yeah, sure.
And this is fun for me because I participated in an Idena ceremony. I think it was about a year ago. Could you tell us about how Idena actually verifies the humans?
Yes, the Idena protocol, as I said, it's the attendance based protocol. So there is no KYC, no biometrics. So the protocol is based on a regular validation ceremony where you need to prove your aliveness and uniqueness by participating in that. And it's based on the idea that you cannot be in many places at the same time. So all participants appear online at the same time across the world and prove their personhood by solving so-called flip tests. Flip tests is a kind of a captcha, but they made by other participants, which makes them more AI resistant. And FLIP is abbreviation. It stands for Filter for Life Intelligent People. It's a binary test, so we need to solve a bunch of these tests, to prove your personhood. And there are two sides of these tests, like two answers. They looks like a comics, There are sequences of images that tell you a story without using any text. It's like it's language agnostic. So every flip has two versions of the story. One is correct and one is shuffled. And to complete this test, you need just to identify which story makes more sense for the majority of other people who also solve this test. So solving this flip test is pretty simple. It's not an IQ test, but it's even kids can do, this test. Even if you get the difficult flip during the ceremony where you cannot identify the right answer, it's most likely will be disqualified by the consensus, because other people who also cannot solve this flip, they will vote randomly and will not be able, the committee will not be able to reach the consensus about the right answer, and the flip will be disqualified, and the author of this flip will be the author will just lose some rewards because of that. So yeah, this is pretty much it about the ceremony, and we have this ceremony like on a regular basis, and the epoch duration depends on the network size. The larger the network, the less frequent the ceremony take place. So and yeah, this is pretty much about the ceremony itself. So let me know if it makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I remember participating in the ceremony, and this might have been last summer that I participated in one, but if I recall, it was it was every 2 weeks the ceremonies were happening back then. Does that seem like the right time interval?
Yeah, that's right. It was 2 weeks. It's as I said, is a function of the network size, and it's always like happens at the same time, and it happens like early in the morning for the America, and late at night for the Asia, and it's like 1:30 p.m. UTC time, which is a day
Right.
for Europeans.
Yeah, and I recall basically getting online and then opening up, I think it was an Idena website, or it might have been an application. And then for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, I can't recall, solving a series of these flips. And I remember thinking that they do kind of feel like CAPTCHAs in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I passed the ceremony, and I was part of the registry for a little while after that, which was cool. I can't remember if I got any tokens for doing it, but but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, yeah. The thing is that the identity is not forever, so it just lasts for until the next validation. So if you can actually miss up to 2 validations in a row, and then your identity got terminated. And once you get verified, once you get validated with the ceremony, you can run your node and get some kind of coins for that. And the validation itself can be run both on desktop version of the Idena app, or we recently developed, maybe it was like a year ago, we just deployed the web version, so it's available on the browser, so you can just connect to any shared node that provided by the community, and you can even run it on your mobile, which is really nice. So you can do the validations wherever you are.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I did after I went through the ceremony was I went onto the Gitcoin website and I verified my identity on Gitcoin so that I could get more matching. So it was neat to see Gitcoin and Idena interoperate in that way.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, now we have the Gitcoin passport, right? And we actually submitted the pull request to get that integration with the Gitcoin passport as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm curious if there's anything I didn't ask that you want to say about Idena. I think that I think it's really neat to see a bunch of different pluralistic ways of creating more Sybil resistance, work together and build this ecosystem. So I'm curious if there's anything that I didn't ask that you want to say.
Probably I would like to explain a bit about our anonymity. I think it's a very important part of Idena project.
Right.
And first of all, I wanted to say thank you, Kevin, for inviting us, even regardless on our anonymity. And it's also it's the first time we speak in public that way. And actually, we committed to stay anonymous, inspired by Satoshi, and as well as in Bitcoin, we didn't make any ICO, so the project is fully open source and anyone can follow and contribute. And the main reason why we stay anonymous is we wanted to minimize our influence on the protocol. So we want the community to decide about the protocol values. And I think it's very important feeling when community members just feel in charge of protocol changes. We are as a team, we cannot make any simple changes in the protocol, so we cannot deploy any hard fork without community support, because the validators who control the network and users who use the system are the same people. So we are very thankful to our community for their activity and involvement into the protocol governance. And I want to say a special thanks to all our old guys. I want to say that we hear you. We do our best to follow your discussions and read your comments. And thank you for staying with us for such a long time. Really appreciate that. And we really share your passion about building democracy and sustainable civil resistance.
Yeah. Well, I do think that there's really an important, I don't want to say trade-off, but I want to say a design criteria of creating actual Sybil resistance, but still protecting privacy. I think that's a really important thing that you just can't bolt on at the end. And of the mechanisms that Brian Ford told us about, presence-based, biometric, KYC, and web of trust, it feels like there's a lot of in that trade-off space privacy concerns that I really have concerns about with KYC and biometrics. And I think relying totally on presence-based and web of trust is a really elegant way of creating more Sybil resistance, but also maintaining privacy. And y'all are it seems like y'all are doing it, and the fact that you're anon yourself as the founder, I think is an interesting fact pattern that supports the privacy at the base layer. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else? Are there any other sort of important design criteria that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, I would also like to tell a bit about the use cases of human-centric blockchains in general.
Yeah,
because there are some that are really on the surface, but like votings, DAOs, airdrops, quadratic voting, quadratic funding, UBIs, and actually now we have quadratic staking, and we have Idena as the blockchain is also the use case for unique identity primitive. But we also have many things to discover, and I would like to name a few of them. For example, it's the on-chain ads. We do experiment with that, and nobody likes ads, but on-chain ads is a different concept, and it's something that you just publish on-chain, and anybody can pull that out and just view that ads, and we build a kind of a protocol based on self-targeted ads. So and I think it's a huge market that still doesn't exist on chain, which is really interesting, and it can only work with the unique identity primitive. The interesting idea is about the content moderation. This also we do some experiments with that. We use randomly selected human oracles for the ads moderation, and probably another version of that we could experiment with the fake news analysis. Like it's a subject to explore, but probably could make some experiments with that.
Yeah. And is there an ecosystem of people that are building these type of things on top of Idena? Tell me about the community.
Yeah, we already have built-in into the client the Oracle voting system. So if you're a validated identity, then you just can participate in the Oracle votings. You can run your own votings, and it's a kind of Sybil-resistant votings where you can do different things, like you can ask participant to stake something before they vote, before they publish their vote, or you can just pay for some polls, asking their opinions. So yeah, all this stuff is already there. So we run. You can even lock some coins, based and unlock the coins based on oracles decision, which are so that oracles are just randomly selected from the network, and they can decide whether to unlock the coins or just keep them locked. This is actually the interesting primitive that we anticipate to use in order to implement a kind of decentralized Gitcoin, so decentralized common good funding platform. We actually have a so-called zero wallet in Idena protocol, where portion of inflation is getting locked, and it's really big challenge how to spend that coin safely. And yeah, this is kind of a subject that we need to explore and experiment with, and community does really interesting experiments with that, running community multi-sig, like a community wallet. And yeah, hopefully we'll manage to build some kind of an automation, like decentralized smart contracts that could be able to fund projects driven by the randomly selected oracles.
Great. Well, this has been a really fun episode, learning about your take on Sybil resistance. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to say from here?
I think it's pretty much it. So what I just wanted to add that we truly believe that human-centric blockchain can make our lives better. We just need to find the right way to build the identity, which should be, I think, Sybil resistant, pipette resistant, and privacy preserving. And I hope it could lead us to a better world, which is more connected, less polarized, and more democratic. And we are staying in the dangerous fork on the road, so let's pick the right way to stay safe and coordinated.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I guess let's wrap by asking where can people find Idena online?
It's a website, idena.io. So, and you can find all the social media out there.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this episode of GreenPilled. Really enjoyed the conversation, and see you out there in the Sybil resistant future.